My name is Mike Felicki, and I am a teacher with Boundless Way Zen. And today I want to offer a brief talk about the title of James Ford Roshi's book, If You're Lucky, Your Heart Will Break. Counterintuitive, but true. And something we can reflect on as really at the heart of the Dharma. I think back to the time of Siddhartha. Siddhartha was born a prince, born to a king. And his father wanted him to be a king when he grew up, so he tried to create for him the perfect life, a life that he would grow very attached to and not want to leave. And so he hid suffering from Siddhartha. He built palace walls around their garden. And Siddhartha was kept inside with young and beautiful people, always entertained, always well nourished. If anyone got sick, they would whisk them away so that Siddhartha would not have to witness it. It was like the Garden of Eden. But like any good Garden of Eden, there was a snake. And the snake, in this case, was Siddhartha's own curiosity. And eventually Siddhartha realized that something was missing from this perfect world. It's an interesting moment. We all imagine that if I could choose anything, I would choose to live in a paradise where there's no suffering. But when Siddhartha did live there, he chose to leave. It reminds us of in the Odyssey when Odysseus, too, living with a goddess, a beautiful goddess who constantly seduces him and with all of his needs met, what does he decide? To leave, to return out of duty to his family and his wife. So too with Siddhartha, realizes, something's missing here, and he leaves the palace to go outside, and in doing so, he sees suffering for the first time, and he's lucky. His heart breaks. He's touched by the suffering of the world. He sees sickness, old age, and death, and realizes that he wants to be of service. He wants to help conquer suffering in the world. This is his great bodhisattva heart awakening, his great love, compassion for all beings. And Siddhartha, at this time, still perhaps doesn't fully realize how interconnected he is with all beings, even though his heart is deeply touched. And he thinks, if I can conquer suffering, I can transcend it, and I can bring these teachings back to others. So he goes into the forest and practices a kind of asceticism, rejecting, in fact, connectedness in a way. He rejects his own body, its needs for nourishment, and practices these different forms of meditation that suppress feelings and thoughts. They all fail. It's another important teaching for us, for those of us practicing meditation, the idea that we can escape humanity, what it is to be a human being, through techniques like breath work, leads us to a dead-end path. Actually, our true life is the life of the heart. Siddhartha eventually realizes that he's been too far into two different extremes. One, a materialistic kind of attachment and isolation that his father had hoped for, like a gated community. And the other, this total denial of the material world, a kind of ascetic escapism that we might find in a kind of hermetic practice, in a sense. So he sits under the Bodhi tree, no longer trying to escape his humanness, just to see what is. And here is the heart of practice. Mara comes and challenges him, brings forth frightening visions, asks him, what makes you think you're worthy? But through all of these fearsome, grief-ridden, desire-filled, shameful, and different emotions, Siddhartha simply stays present and says, I see you. Not get away from me, Satan. And not, oh yes, you're right. I'm so bad, I'm not worthy. This middle path. I see you. Compassionate. I see suffering. But not attached to it, not identified with it. All things come and go. And through this practice, he is freed to see what is without bonding to what is. And this is our real freedom. Buddha does not remain alone after his awakening. He realizes that he is bound up in everybody's destiny and heads off back to the people who he'd left to practice with them again and to teach them what he has learned. This re-engagement with the world, so important, such a central aspect of Mahayana Buddhism. This form of practice is not to turn away from the world, but to turn toward what is and offer ourselves, which only happens because our hearts have broken open and we realize that we can bear the suffering of the world. We can be with it with great compassion. Without being stuck to it, we can be in it. And then we can be of service. And this, to me, is the true call of Buddhist practice. There is no fixed self for us to maintain. There is no separate self that we can discover. We are deeply interwoven. And as such, when we allow our hearts to break, we break open in compassion, in a boundless interconnectedness that draws us forth to be of service in this suffering world.